People always tell you that family comes first, but they never tell you what to do when family is the one robbing you blind. I watched my Aunt Darlene smile in my face while she pocketed $5,600 of my hard-earned tips. I didn't just want my money back. I wanted the truth to scream louder than her lies. So I hit record, and I watched my quiet life in Briar Glen burn down in 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The salt air in Briar Glen usually felt like a promise. It was the reason tourists flooded our little coastal town every May, clogging the single-lane streets with oversized SUVs and fighting for parking spots near the pier. For them, the air smelled like vacation, like lobster rolls and freedom. For me, it smelled like work. It smelled like the end of a double shift at Harbor and Honey Cafe, where the espresso machine hissed like an angry cat and my feet throbbed in time with the bass of the overhead speakers. I was 33 years old, and my life was currently measured in $6 lattes and the slow grinding reduction of debt. 2 years ago, I had signed the divorce papers that ended a marriage to a man who thought financial transparency was a suggestion rather than a rule. He left me with a lease I could barely afford, a credit score that looked like a failing grade, and a deep, rattling anxiety about stability. I had spent 24 months clawing my way back to zero. I was not there yet. I was still in the negative, but the hole was shallower. Every shift I picked up was a shovel full of dirt filling that pit. I wiped down the counter, the smell of stale coffee grounds clinging to my apron. It was a Tuesday, usually slow, but the early summer crowd was already trickling in. Miles Harrow, the owner of Harbor and Honey, had decided this season was going to be different. He stood near the entrance, adjusting the new signage with the fussiness of a man who cared more about aesthetics than operations. "Check out the summer kindness drive," he said, stepping back to admire a large, clear plexiglass box he had mounted right next to the register. It was branded with smiling suns and looped script. "We are going to be the heart of the community. Violet. 50% of the donations go to the local youth shelter. The rest covers the operational costs of the drive. It is a win-win." I looked at the box. Then I looked at the new tip jars. They were uniform. Tall glass cylinders that matched the donation box, placed strategically along the counter. "It looks nice." "Miles," I said, forcing a smile, "I just hope people do not get confused between the tip jar and the donation box." He waved a hand, dismissing the concern. "It is all clear. We are building a culture of generosity." Becca Rios, the manager, walked up beside me, carrying a stack of napkins. She looked as tired as I felt. Her dark hair was pulled back in a fraying bun, and she had the 1,000-yard stare of someone who had been managing teenage baristas for too long. "We are down 2 runners for the weekend," Becca murmured, keeping her voice low so Miles would not hear. "If we do not hire someone by Friday, you and I are going to be pulling triples, not doubles." I felt a cold spike in my chest. I needed the money, but my body was already staging a protest. "I can take the Saturday morning shift," I said. "But I cannot close Saturday and open Sunday. I will collapse." "We will find someone," Becca said, though she did not sound convinced. "Just keep smiling. Violet, it is the summer of kindness, remember?" I went back to counting out the drawer. The rhythm of it was soothing. 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s. The paper felt gritty against my fingertips. This was my reality, tangible, countable, mine. I had a system. I trusted systems. Systems did not lie to you about credit card bills or hide notices from the bank. Then the bell above the door chimed, not with the polite ring of a customer entering, but with the aggressive jangle of someone throwing the door wide open. "Violet." The voice was a time machine. It transported me instantly back to a cramped living room in Ohio, to the smell of cheap perfume and cigarettes, to a feeling of being small and overlooked. I looked up and saw Aunt Darlene standing in the entrance of Harbor and Honey, arms wide, looking like she had just stepped off a cruise ship rather than a Greyhound bus. She was 52 but dressed like she was 30, in a flowing floral maxi dress and oversized sunglasses that she pushed up into her bleached blonde hair. She carried 2 massive tote bags and a smile that could sell sand in the desert. "Aunt Darlene?" I asked, the name feeling heavy on my tongue. She rushed the counter, ignoring the line of 2 customers behind her, and leaned over to squeeze me. The scent of vanilla and hairspray was overwhelming. "Look at you," she squealed, pulling back to inspect me. "You are so skinny." "Vi, do you eat? You look successful. Look at this place." I gently extricated myself from her grip. "I am just a server here. Darlene, I do not own it. What are you doing here? I thought you were in Tampa." "Florida was a bust," she said, her expression shifting instantly from joy to tragedy. The transition was so smooth it was almost impressive. They laid everyone off at the resort. New management. Brutal. I lost the apartment. Vi, I just needed a fresh start, I thought. Where is family? Where is the one person who knows what it is like to start over? She reached into one of her tote bags and pulled out a wrapped box. "I saw this and thought of you." I took the box. It was heavy. Inside was a ceramic cat, painted in bright, garish colors. It was something you would buy at a highway rest stop. "Thank you," I said, placing it under the counter. "But Darlene, you cannot just be here. I am working." I know, she said, holding up her hands in surrender. "I am not asking for much. Just a couch, a few days, until I get my feet under me. I have an interview lined up already. I am not looking for a handout, just family." I looked at Becca, who was watching with raised eyebrows. I looked at the line of customers growing impatient. I looked at Darlene, whose eyes were shimmering with unshed tears. It was a performance. I knew that. But Darlene was my mother's sister, and after my mom passed, Darlene was the only thread left to a childhood that felt like a blurred photograph. "1 week," I said, my voice hard. "You can sleep on the couch, but I have rules. Anything," she promised. I clocked out 3 hours later, and Darlene was waiting on the patio, chatting with a regular customer like she had lived in Briar Glen for decades. We walked to my apartment in silence, the sea breeze whipping her dress around her legs. My apartment was small. It was a 1-bedroom walk-up above a bakery, and it always smelled faintly of yeast and sugar. It was not much, but it was mine. I had painted the walls a calm sage green. I had bought the furniture piece by piece from thrift stores, sanding and staining until it looked cohesive. It was my sanctuary. Darlene dropped her bags in the middle of the living room, instantly shrinking the space. "It is cute," she said, looking around with a critical eye. "A bit small, but cozy. Sit down." "Darlene," I said. She sat on the edge of the gray sofa, folding her hands in her lap. "Here are the boundaries," I said, standing over her. I needed to feel tall. I needed to feel like the authority in my own life. Number 1, no borrowing money. I do not care if it is for milk or medicine. I am on a strict budget to pay off the divorce debt. If you need money, you work. "Of course," she said, nodding vigorously. "I have savings. I would never ask you." "Number 2, I continued, "do not interfere at my work. Harbor and Honey is my job, not our social club. You do not come in and hang out. Understood. Professional distance. And number 3, I said, leaning in, "no gossip. Briar Glen is a small town. Everyone knows everyone. If I hear you are telling people about my divorce, or my finances, or anything personal, the locks get changed." Darlene put a hand over her heart. "Violet, honey, I am hurt. You even think you have to say that. I am here to support you. I want to help you heal." She looked so sincere. That was the thing about Darlene. She believed her own lies in the moment she told them. She believed she was the victim, the hero, the martyr. She believed she was good, and because she believed it, it was hard not to want to believe it too. "Okay," I said. Letting out a breath I felt like I had been holding since she walked through the cafe door. 1 week, the first 3 days were surprisingly fine. Darlene slept late, cleaned the kitchen while I was at work, and cooked a surprisingly good lasagna on Thursday night. I started to relax. Maybe she really had changed. Maybe she really just needed a break. Then came Friday. I walked into Harbor and Honey for the opening shift. And there was Darlene, standing behind the counter, tying an apron around her waist. My stomach dropped through the floor. "Darlene?" She looked up, beaming. Surprise! Becca walked out of the back office, looking relieved. "Violet, you are not going to believe this. Darlene came in to drop off your charger. You forgot it this morning, and we got to talking. She has 10 years of front-of-house experience. She managed a diner in Dayton." "She did what?" I asked, looking at Darlene. She had never managed anything in her life except a string of bad boyfriends. "I pitched in a little while Becca was on the phone," Darlene said smoothly. "Just bussing a few tables." Then Miles came in. Miles walked out from the kitchen, holding a croissant. "Violet, your aunt is a lifesaver. She knows the community board director?" "Apparently. They worked together on a charity drive in Ohio years ago." That was a lie. I knew it was a lie. Darlene had never done charity work in Ohio. She had worked at a bingo hall. "She is just going to be a temporary runner," Miles said. "Just to get us through the summer rush. It helps you. Helps us. Family helping family. That is the brand, right?" I looked at Darlene. She gave me a small, conspiratorial wink. It was not a malicious wink. It was a "we are in this together" wink, but I did not want to be in anything with her. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Becca?" I asked. Becca followed me into the pantry. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. "Why?" Becca asked, frowning. "She is charming. Violet, customers love her already, and she is cheap. Miles offered her minimum plus a smaller tip share because she is just running food, and she took it without blinking. We need the bodies. Vi, unless you want to work 7 days a week?" I bit my lip. I did not want to work 7 days a week. I wanted to sleep. I wanted to rest. "Fine," I said, defeated. "But she is temporary. Temporary." Becca agreed. The shift started, and I watched Darlene work. I had to admit, she was good. She was fast. She knew how to talk to the older men who came in for coffee and the young mothers who needed high chairs. She moved through the dining room with a fluid efficiency, but then the hovering started. It was subtle at first. I was at the register, counting out change for a 20, and Darlene slid up beside me. "Let me grab that specifically for you," she said, reaching for the stack of ones I had just counted. I pulled my hand back. I got it. "Darlene, I am just helping," she whispered, her voice tight with wounded pride. "You look overwhelmed." "I am not overwhelmed. I am working. Go run table 4. An hour later, I was organizing the tip jars. We had a system. Every 4 hours. We emptied the counter jars into a zippered bag that went into the safe until the end of the night. It kept the cash off the floor. I had the bag open, and Darlene appeared at my elbow. "Here, let me run that to the safe for you," she said. "You have a table waiting on the patio." I froze. No one went into the safe except shift leads. You do not know the combination. "Darlene, Miles left it open for the manager," she said casually. "Come on, Vi, go take the order. I'm just trying to support you." Her use of the word support felt like a gentle chokehold. "I will take it," I said sharply. "Do not touch the money." "Darlene, ever." She recoiled like I had slapped her. "Wow, okay. Trust issues much?" "I am your blood." "Violet." She walked away, shaking her head, and I felt a wave of guilt. Was I being paranoid? Was I letting my history with my ex-husband color my view of my aunt? She was just trying to be useful. She wanted to prove she was worth the job. I walked the bag to the safe, locked it, and went back to work. But the feeling of unease sat in my gut like a stone. Saturday was a nightmare. The summer kindness drive had brought in more foot traffic than we expected. The line wrapped around the block. The espresso machine broke down for 20 minutes, causing a riot of caffeine-deprived tourists. I ran until my legs felt like lead. Darlene was everywhere. She was refilling water, clearing tables, chatting up the line. She was undeniably helpful. Every time I turned around, she was there, handing me a fresh towel or a glass of water. "You are doing great, honey," she would say. "Just breathe." By the time we flipped the sign to closed at 10 in the evening, I was practically hallucinating from exhaustion. Becca had left early for a family emergency, so it was just me and Shay Fulton, the other server, closing up, and Darlene. Let us count out, I said, pulling the heavy zippered bags from the safe. We poured the cash onto the stainless steel counter in the back office. It was a mountain of small bills. The smell of money, dirty, metallic, fibrous, filled the small room. Darlene stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "Do you want me to help sort?" she asked. "I can stack the ones." "No," I said automatically. "Shay and I do the count. You can sweep the front." Darlene sighed but turned away. I started the count. Shay took the credit card receipts. I took the cash. I had a mental tally in my head. We had been slammed, based on the sales. The cash tips should have been around $600 for the pool. I counted. Then I counted again. I frowned. "What is it?" Shay asked. Looking up from her calculator, I counted a third time. My hands felt cold. $480. That is not right, Shay said. "We did $3,000 in sales, even with a bad tip average. It should be higher." "Maybe people tipped on cards more?" I suggested. My voice wavering. Shay checked the receipts. "Card tips are average. Maybe people just stiffed us on cash?" "It happens. Tourists, right?" I looked at the pile of bills. $120 short. It was not a fortune, but in the service industry. It was a grocery run. It was a phone bill. I felt a prickle of panic. Had I dropped money? Had I miscounted when I did the mid-shift drop? I thought about the chaos of the rush. I thought about the moment I dropped the bag in the safe. I had been rushing. Maybe a bill had fallen? Darlene walked back in, holding a broom. "All done out front. You girls almost finished?" "I am starving." "We are light," I said, staring at the money. "About $120 light." Darlene's face crumpled in sympathy. "Oh no. Really? That is terrible." She walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "It happens. Vi, you were running around like a headless chicken today. Maybe you gave someone wrong change? Or maybe someone reached in the jar?" "No one reached in the jar," I said defensively. "I was watching." "Were you?" she asked softly. "You were pretty distracted when the coffee machine broke." The seed of doubt was planted. I had been distracted. I had been stressed. Maybe I had messed up. My ex-husband's voice echoed in my head. "You are always so careless. Violet, you do not pay attention to the details." I took a breath. "Okay, we split what we have. I will write a note to Becca. We split the money." I walked home with $40 less than I expected. It hurt. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in my bed, listening to the sound of Darlene snoring on the couch in the living room. The door was open a crack. I reached under my mattress and pulled out a small, spiral-bound notebook. I had bought it when I first started at Harbor and Honey to track my debt payoff. I opened to a fresh page. Saturday, June 14th. Weather: sunny, hot, traffic, heavy/tourists, shift mood, chaotic, expected cash, $600, approx. Actual cash, $480, variance, minus $120. I stared at the numbers, then I wrote underneath, gut feeling, wrong. I hesitated, then added, Darlene access, high. I closed the notebook and shoved it back under the mattress. I felt guilty just writing it. She was my aunt. She was sleeping on my couch because she had nowhere else to go. She had bought me a ceramic cat. She was trying. The next few days were a blur of tension. I watched the jars like a hawk. Tuesday was fine. Wednesday was fine. The totals matched exactly. I started to relax. It must have been a fluke, a one-time error. But the anxiety did not leave. It hummed under my skin. I found myself double-checking the locks on my apartment door. I found myself counting the money in my own wallet every morning. On Thursday, Darlene and I were folding napkins at a corner table during a lull. "You seem tense." "Violet," she said, smoothing a linen square. "Your shoulders are up to your ears. I am just tired." I said, "You worry too much about money," she said. She said it casually, like commenting on the weather. "I worry about money because I have debt. Darlene, and because my rent is due in 2 weeks. She tutted, shaking her head. Money is energy. Violet, if you clutch it too tight, you strangle the flow. You need to release that fear. Focus on gratitude. Look at this job. Look at your health. You are so blessed, and you do not even see it because you are obsessing over cash. I stared at her. The audacity of it took my breath away. Here was a woman sleeping on my couch for free, eating my food, working a job I helped her get, telling me I should not care about the resource that kept a roof over our heads. It felt like she was rewriting reality. If I challenged her, I was negative. If I worried, I was ungrateful. It was a trap. I am grateful. I said, my voice stiff, but gratitude does not pay the electric bill. She smiled a beatific, pitying smile. Not with that attitude. It does not. I stood up. I need to check the restroom. I walked away because I wanted to scream. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked older than 33. Focus on gratitude. It was the kind of thing people said when they wanted you to stop asking questions. I went back out to the floor. The afternoon rush began. We were busy, but not Saturday busy. The jars were filling up nicely. Around 5 in the afternoon, the sky turned dark. A summer storm rolled in, dumping rain on the streets and driving everyone inside. The cafe was packed with people seeking shelter. The noise level rose. I was behind the espresso machine, pulling shots. Darlene was running food. Becca was in the office on a call. I finished a line of drinks and wiped my hands. I looked up to scan the room. The counter was crowded. People were leaning over, asking for napkins, asking for Wi-Fi passwords. I looked toward the register. The promotional stand for the Summer Kindness Drive, a large cardboard cutout of a sun, blocked part of the view of the main tip jar. It was a blind spot. I had never noticed it before because I usually stood right next to it, but from the espresso machine, you could not see the jar clearly. Except for one angle. I saw a flash of floral print. Darlene. She was standing near the register, her back to the room. She was leaning over the counter, chatting with a customer who was looking at the menu board, but her right hand was not on the counter. It was not holding a menu. It was dipped inside the tall glass cylinder of the tip jar. Time seemed to slow down. I saw her fingers curl around a cluster of bills. I saw the green of the cash against her pale skin. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Darlene pulled her hand out. The motion was fast, practiced. She balled the paper into her fist, and in the same smooth motion, dropped her hand into the deep pocket of her apron. She turned her head and saw me watching her. For a split second, there was panic in her eyes. Real, sharp fear. Then, the mask slammed back down. She laughed, a bright, bubbly sound that cut through the cafe noise. "Just straightening the bills," she called out to me, gesturing vaguely at the jar. They were getting all jammed up at the top. You know how it is. She patted her apron pocket, where the money was, and turned back to the customer with a dazzling smile. "How can I help you today, sir?" I stood there, gripping the portafilter until my knuckles turned white, just straightening the bills. It was a plausible lie. Bills did get stuck. We did push them down sometimes, but she had not pushed them down. She had pulled them out. Or had she? My mind started to spin. The lighting was dim. The rain was lashing against the windows. Maybe I had seen it wrong. Maybe she really was just fixing it. If I accused her, and I was wrong. She was my aunt. She was family. She was fragile. But the image of her hand, the claw-like curl of her fingers, was burned into my retinas. I looked at the jar. It looked lower than it had 10 minutes ago. I looked at Darlene. She was laughing at something the customer said, looking for all the world like the perfect, helpful employee. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I did not say a word. I turned back to the machine and locked the portafilter into place. But as the dark liquid began to drip into the cup, I knew that the summer of kindness was over. The theft had begun, and I was the only witness who was too afraid to believe her own eyes. I did not sleep that night. The image of Aunt Darlene's hand, pale, manicured, and quick as a snake, Dipping into the glass jar played on a loop in my mind every time I closed my eyes. I saw the bills disappearing into her apron. But when the morning sun hit the peeling paint of my bedroom ceiling, the doubt crept back in. Had I really seen it? Or was I just a bitter divorcee projecting my financial trauma onto the only family I had left? I needed to be sure. I could not accuse my own aunt of theft based on a shadow and a hunch. If I was wrong, I would torch the relationship forever. If I was right, I needed ammunition that was heavier than my word against hers. I stopped at the pharmacy on my way to work and bought a pack of ultra-fine point blue pens. I sat in my car in the parking lot of Harbor and Honey, my hands trembling slightly as I pulled 3 $20 bills from my own wallet. This was my bait. I developed a system in that cramped sedan. I would not mark the face of the bill. That was too obvious. Instead, I turned the bill over to the side with the White House. On the bottom right corner, inside the 0 of the 20, I made a single, microscopic dot. It was invisible unless you were looking for it. Then, I opened my notebook, the one I kept hidden under my mattress, now residing in my purse, and wrote down the last 4 digits of the serial number for each bill: JD4522, KA8901, LC3345. I felt like a spy in a bad movie, but as I walked into the cafe, the feeling of nausea in my stomach was very real. The weekend shifts were grueling. Briar Glen was hitting peak season, and the tourists were ravenous. The bell above the door never stopped ringing. Darlene was already there when I clocked in, tying her apron strings with a flourish. "Good morning, sunshine," she chirped, handing me a coffee. She had made it exactly how I liked it. Oat milk, 2 pumps of vanilla. It was a kindness that made my stomach turn. How could someone be so thoughtful and so deceitful at the same time? "Thanks," I muttered. Taking the cup, I watched her all morning. She was a whirlwind of efficiency. She ran food. She bussed tables. She charmed the elderly couple in booth 4 until they were practically ready to adopt her. But every time she walked past the tip jars, my heart hammered against my ribs. I waited until the lunch rush was just beginning to swell. The cafe was loud, a cacophony of clattering plates and chatter. I went to the register to ring up a takeout order for myself, a bagel I did not want, and paid with one of the marked 20s. I made sure to drop it into the tip jar myself, watching it settle against the glass. I kept my eye on that bill for 3 hours. It was torture. Every time a customer added to the jar, I flinched. Every time Darlene walked by, I held my breath. At 2 in the afternoon, Darlene offered to consolidate the jars. "They are getting full." "Vi," she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Let me dump them into the bag for the safe. You stay on bar. You are crushing that line." I hesitated. This was it. This was the moment. "Actually," I said, forcing my voice to stay level, "I need a break from the steam wand." "I will do it. You hop on the register." She blinked, surprised. "Oh, okay, sure." I took the jars to the back office. My hands were shaking so hard, I nearly dropped the glass cylinder. I poured the mountain of cash onto the desk and began to sift through it frantically. I was looking for the blue dot. I was looking for JD4522. It was there. I let out a breath that felt like a sob. The bill was there. She had not taken it. I slumped into the office chair, feeling a wave of relief so potent it made me dizzy. I was crazy. I was paranoid. She had not taken it because she was not a thief. She was just my Aunt Darlene, struggling to get by, and I was a terrible niece. But the relief did not last. 2 weeks went by, and the pattern began to emerge in the numbers. I tracked everything in my notebook. Weekday shifts, Monday through Thursday, were consistent. We averaged about 18% in tips relative to sales. It was standard, predictable, but Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the shifts Darlene worked were bleeding. The first weekend, the tip average dropped to 15%. The second weekend, it plummeted to 12%. I stared at the pages of my notebook until the numbers blurred. It did not make sense. Weekends were when people were happier, looser with their cash. We should have been making more, not less. My body began to rebel against the stress. I woke up at 3 in the morning with my stomach in knots. I lost my appetite. I started grinding my teeth so hard my jaw ached by midday. I tried to talk to Becca about it on a Tuesday afternoon. We were in the walk-in cooler, taking inventory of the milk. The cold air felt good against my flushed skin. "Becca," I said, keeping my eyes on the clipboard, "have you noticed the drops on the weekends?" "What drops?" she asked, counting gallons of whole milk. "The tips," I said. "We are down almost 30% on cash tips compared to last year, only on the weekends." Becca sighed, her breath pluming in the frigid air. "Violet, tips fluctuate. The economy is weird right now. People are tipping less everywhere. I read an article about it. Tip fatigue. It is not fatigue." "Becca," I pressed, "it is specific. It is only when Darlene is on." Becca stopped counting and turned to me. Her expression was guarded. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying the numbers do not add up. Look," she said, her voice dropping. "Miles loves your aunt. She is great with the customers. We are finally fully staffed. Do not go looking for trouble where there isn't any, if you accuse her. And you are wrong. Miles will see it as you creating a hostile work environment. He is big on the good vibes thing right now." I shut my mouth. The message was clear. Don't rock the boat. Miles was even worse. A few days later, I found him rearranging the summer kindness display. "Mr. Harrow," I said, approaching him cautiously, "I am worried about the cash handling procedures. I think we need a tighter system for the tip jars. Maybe only managers handle the consolidation?" He laughed, a booming, jovial sound that grated on my nerves. "Violet, you worry too much. We are a family here. That is the Harbor and Honey difference. If we start locking everything down like Fort Knox, we lose the trust. We lose the soul. Your aunt is trying so hard. She told me how much this job means to her. Let us not make it harder with a bunch of red tape. Okay?" He clapped me on the shoulder. "Be kind. Violet, it is the season for it." I walked away feeling gaslit. Was I the villain? Was I the cold-hearted accountant trying to ruin the family vibe? But then I saw the nails. Darlene came home one evening with a fresh set of acrylics. They were long, coffin-shaped, and painted a shimmering, iridescent pink. I knew what a set like that cost in Briar Glen. $80, minimum, plus tip. I stared at her hands as she chopped vegetables for a salad. "Nice nails," I said. She wiggled her fingers. "Aren't they fun?" A little treat. I had a coupon. 2 days later, she had a new phone case. It was covered in Swarovski crystals, real ones, gift from an old friend. She said when she saw me looking, they mailed it to me. Then there was the incident at the corner market. I had stopped in to buy milk on my way home, and I saw Darlene at the counter ahead of me. She did not see me. She was buying a carton of cigarettes, a bottle of wine, and a stack of scratch-off lottery tickets. She paid in cash, a thick wad of 1s and 5s. I ducked behind the chip rack, my heart pounding. I waited until she left before I approached the counter. The clerk, a teenager named Leo, who I had known for years, looked bored. "Hey, Leo," I said, trying to sound casual. "Was that my aunt?" "Yeah," he said, popping his gum. "She is in here all the time, always pays in small bills. It is annoying to count." I walked home with the milk, my mind racing. Small bills, tip money. She claimed she was broke. She claimed she was saving every penny for a deposit on an apartment, but she was bleeding cash at the corner store and lying about coupons. I felt cornered. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. I went into work early the next Saturday. The cafe was empty, the morning light filtering through the dust motes dancing in the air. I stood behind the counter and looked at the space with fresh eyes. I was not looking at it as a server. I was looking at it as a thief. If I wanted to steal, where would I do it? The cameras were high-resolution domes mounted in the corners of the ceiling. I traced their sightlines. There was one over the door, one over the dining room, and one pointed at the register. I stood at the register and looked up. The camera blinked a slow red light. It had a clear view of the POS system and the counter directly in front of it, But then I looked at the summer kindness stand. It was a tall cardboard cutout of a son wearing sunglasses, holding a thermometer that tracked our donations. Miles had insisted on placing it right next to the register to encourage giving. I moved to where Darlene usually stood when she was helping near the register. I crouched slightly, mimicking her posture when she leaned in to talk to customers. From that angle, the cardboard sun perfectly eclipsed the view of the main tip jar from the camera above. It was a blind spot, a perfect, accidental shadow. I felt a chill run down my spine. Darlene knew. She had to know. She had tested the angles. Just like I was doing. That was why she always moved the jars to safer spots. She wasn't moving them to safety. She was moving them into the dark. I decided to run the test again, but this time, I would be smarter. I marked 3 more bills, a 10, a 5, and a 1. I used the same blue dot method, recording the serial fragments. 10, BF, 5678, 5, ML, 1234, 1, QR9, 876. The Saturday rush hit like a tidal wave. By noon, the line was out the door. I was on the espresso machine, pulling shots until my wrists ached. Darlene was running food, but she kept drifting back to the register. "I need to grab some napkins," she would say, squeezing past the blind spot. "I need to check the wait list," she would say, leaning over the counter. I waited for my moment. At 1:30, the jar was full. The bills were pressed against the glass. I walked over, pretending to grab a pen, and shoved my 3 marked bills into the jar. I pushed them down deep, mixing them with the other cash. I saw the blue dot on the 10 disappear into the mass of green. I went back to my station. I did not watch her this time. I could not risk her seeing me watch. I had to trust the trap. At 3 o'clock, Darlene came up to me. "Jars are bursting. Vi, I am going to do a quick consolidation before the afternoon lull." My stomach dropped. This was it. "Okay," I said. "Go ahead." She took the jars. She walked to the blind spot. She turned her back to the room, shielded by the cardboard sun. She stood there for maybe 30 seconds. I heard the rustle of paper. "Okay, all done," she called out, holding up the zippered bag, taking it to the safe. She breezed past me, smelling of vanilla and theft. I waited until closing time. The cafe was quiet. Becca had already left, leaving me as the shift lead. It was just me, Shay, and Darlene cleaning up. "I need to verify the safe count from midday," I announced. Miles sent a text. He thinks the deposit log was off yesterday. It was a lie. But Darlene didn't know that. I opened the safe and pulled out the zippered bag from the afternoon drop. My hands were shaking so bad I had to clasp them together for a second to steady them. I dumped the bag onto the desk. "You want help?" Darlene asked from the doorway. "No," I said sharply. "I need to focus." I started counting. I sorted the bills. 10s, 5s, 1s. I flipped every single bill over. I scanned the corners. I found the $1 bill. QR 9876. I found the $5 bill. ML 1234. I searched for the 10. BF 5678. I went through the stack again, then a third time. The 10 was gone. The marked $10 bill was missing. I sat back in the chair, the silence of the office pressing in on my ears. She had taken it. She had fished it out during that 30-second window in the blind spot. But where was it? She had pockets, but she knew I might see a bulge. She had a purse, but it was in the lockers. I thought about her movements. She had stood by the register. She had consolidated the jars. Then she had walked to the safe. Wait, the donation box. The Summer Kindness Drive box was right next to the tip jars. It had a slot on top for cash and a slot for envelopes. I stood up and walked out to the front counter. Darlene was sweeping the patio. Shay was wiping down tables. I unlocked the bottom of the donation box. It was mostly full of loose change and a few checks from locals who wanted the tax write-off. But there were also envelopes. Little white envelopes Miles had printed up for people who wanted to give anonymously. I grabbed the stack of envelopes. Most were empty, but one felt thick. I opened it. Inside, neatly folded, was a stack of cash, and right on top, staring back at me with a tiny blue dot in the corner of the zero, was my $10 bill, BF5678. I felt the blood drain from my face. She wasn't just pocketing the money, she was using the donation envelopes as a mule. She would slip the tip money into the envelope, drop it into the donation box, and then, what? Then she would volunteer to count the donations. I remembered her asking Miles earlier that week, "Hey, since I'm helping with the drive, do you want me to tally up the donation box on Sundays?" It was brilliant. It was evil. She was mixing the stolen tips with the charity money to blur the lines. If anyone found the cash, she could claim it was a donation. Oh, a customer must have put it in the wrong slot, or I was just separating the big bills for the deposit. It gave her plausible deniability. It made her look like a saint while she was robbing us blind. I put the money back in the envelope and put the envelope back in the box. I locked it. I walked over to Shay. She was wringing out a rag, looking exhausted. "Shay," I said quietly, "can I ask you something? And please, I need you to be honest." Shay looked up, her eyes wide. She looked scared. "Have you seen Darlene take money?" I asked. Shay looked at the floor. She looked at the door where Darlene was sweeping. She looked back at me. "Violet, I didn't want to say anything. So you have?" Shay nodded miserably. "Last weekend, I saw her slide a 20 into her sleeve. It was like a magic trick. But then she looked at me, and she smiled, and she said something about how families help each other, and I didn't want the drama. Vi, she is your aunt. I didn't want you to hate me for accusing her." I felt a surge of anger. Not at Shay, but at the situation. Darlene had weaponized my relationships against me. She counted on Shay's silence because Shay was my friend. She counted on my silence because I was her niece. "Thank you for telling me," I whispered. I walked home that night in a daze. The betrayal felt physical, like a bruise spreading across my chest. When I got to the apartment, Darlene was already there. She was sitting on the couch, watching a reality show about rich housewives. She had a glass of wine in her hand, a bottle that cost $18 at the liquor store. "Hey," she called out, not looking away from the screen. "You are late?" I was getting worried. I sat down in the armchair opposite her. I did not take off my coat. "Darlene," I said, "we need to talk about the rent." She muted the TV, but she kept her eyes on the remote, toying with the buttons. "Oh? What about it?" "My lease renewal is coming up," I said. "They are raising it by $50. I am going to need you to start chipping in for groceries at least." Darlene's face changed. The warmth evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp look that I had seen only a few times in my childhood. "Violet, honey," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "you know I am saving. Why are you always so focused on what I take? Do you not see what I give? I clean this place. I cook. I provide companionship." "Companionship?" I asked. "Darlene, I like living alone." She laughed, a harsh barking sound. "No, you don't. You are lonely. Violet, you are 33, divorced, and you work in a cafe. You should be lucky anyone wants to be here with you. Most people would have left you in that sad little cycle of debt a long time ago. I am here because I love you, even when you are hard to love." The words landed like a slap. Hard to love. It was exactly what my ex-husband had said to me during our last fight. She knew where to hit. She knew exactly where the bruises were, and she pressed her thumb right into them. "I am tired. Darlene," I said. Standing up, "I am going to bed." I went into my room and locked the door. I pulled out the notebook. I pulled out my calculator. I sat on the floor and started doing the math. I took the average tip percentage from the weekdays. I applied it to the sales totals for the last 3 weekends, the weekends Darlene had worked. I calculated the difference between what we should have made and what we actually took home. Weekend 1 gap, $580. Weekend 2 gap, $740. Weekend 3 gap, $710. I stared at the total, $2,030. That was just the weekends. That was just what I could prove with math. Who knew what she had taken during the week when I wasn't looking? Who knew what she had skimmed from the donation box itself? It was not a few bills. It was not a desperate woman taking $20 for gas. It was a salary. She was paying herself a salary out of my pocket, out of Shay's pocket, out of the pockets of the teenagers who bust tables for minimum wage. It was a system. I closed the notebook. My hands were steady now. The doubt was gone. The guilt was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard realization that the woman sleeping on my couch was not my family. She was a parasite, and she had mistaken my kindness for weakness. I lay in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of the TV in the next room. I thought about the blue dot on the $10 bill. I thought about the gift phone case. I thought about the summer kindness drive. I was going to catch her, and I was not going to do it with a quiet conversation. I was going to do it with evidence so undeniable that not even Miles Harrow and his good vibes could look away. If suspicion was a fog, proof was the lighthouse that cut through it. I was done navigating by feel. I was done wondering if I was crazy, or if the lighting was bad, or if I had simply miscounted because I was tired. I became a forensic accountant in an apron. I turned my phone into a witness. Every time I emptied a jar, I took a photograph. I made sure the timestamp was visible on the screen. I photographed the starting amount in the morning, the mid-shift drop, and the closing total. I logged the weather. I logged the staff rotation. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop that tracked every variable: who was on the floor, the hourly sales volume, and the tip percentage. The data did not lie. It screamed. On days when Darlene was not there, the tip percentage hovered at a healthy 18 to 20%. On days when she was there, it dropped to 12, sometimes 10. I had graphs. I had charts. I had a timeline that could withstand a court-martial, let alone a cafe manager, but I needed the final nail. I needed the camera. I cornered Becca on a Tuesday morning. The cafe was quiet, the air smelling of roasted beans and bleach. Becca was in the back office, buried under invoices. "Becca," I said, closing the door behind me, "I need to see the security footage from last Saturday, specifically between 2 and 4 in the afternoon." Becca did not look up. She rubbed her temples. "Violet, we have been over this. The system is ancient. It overwrites the footage every 48 hours unless we manually save it. Saturday is gone." I felt a surge of frustration. "I know it overwrites, Becca, but I am asking you to save the footage from now on, or give me the password so I can check it myself at the end of the shift." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were rimmed with red. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that comes from managing a business that runs on thin margins and high drama. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you so obsessed with the cameras?" "Violet, is this about your aunt again?" "It is about the money," I said. "We are bleeding cash." "Violet," she said, leaning back in her chair, "Miles is already on my case about labor costs. He does not want me spending hours reviewing footage of people pouring coffee just because you have a family squabble. Unless you have proof of a crime, I cannot get involved. I cannot be the referee between you and Darlene." "It is not a squabble," I said, my voice rising. "It is theft." "Then call the police," Becca said, challenging me. "But if you call them and you are wrong, you know Miles will fire you for causing a scene. We are a family establishment. We do not do drama." She turned back to her invoices. The conversation was over. The cafe preferred the convenience of ignorance over the messiness of truth. They would rather lose money quietly than face a scandal loudly. I walked out of the office, my hands shaking. I was on my own, but the isolation was about to get worse. That afternoon, one of our regulars, Mrs. Gable, came in. She was a sweet woman in her 70s who always ordered a chamomile tea and a scone. I brought her the order, placing the cup down gently on the saucer. "Here you go, Mrs. Gable," I said. She reached out and patted my hand. Her skin was dry and papery. "You are such a hard worker." "Violet," she said, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper, "Darlene told me everything. I froze. Told you what? About your trouble managing your finances, she said, her eyes full of pity. It is nothing to be ashamed of, dear. Divorce can ruin anyone, but it is so wonderful that you have an aunt willing to step in and help you get back on your feet. She told me she is even helping you with your budgeting. I felt the blood drain from my face. The room seemed to tilt. She said she is helping me? I managed to choke out. Mrs. Gable nodded. She said you were drowning in debt and she is just trying to keep you afloat. She is a saint. That woman. You should be grateful. I walked back to the counter, my legs feeling like jelly. I went into the walk-in cooler and stood there, letting the frigid air blast against my burning skin. It was not just the money, it was the narrative. Darlene was not just stealing from me financially. She was stealing my reputation. She was painting a picture of me as the incompetent, broken niece, and herself as the savior. It was a preemptive strike. If I ever accused her, she had already planted the seeds of doubt. Violet is desperate. Violet is bad with money. Violet is the one who needs help. It was brilliant. It was sociopathic. I realized then that I could not just catch her. I had to destroy the lie. I needed Shay. Shay was the only one who knew. She was terrified of conflict, but she was honest. I found her in the breakdown station, polishing silverware. Shay, I said quietly, I need you to do something for me. I'm not asking you to confront her. I'm just asking you to help me move a piece of cardboard. Shay looked at me, her eyes wide. The sun cut out? Yes, the blind spot. If Miles notices, he won't, I promised. Just 2 inches. That is all I need. We waited until the Friday morning cleaning. Darlene was late, as usual. Miles was at the bank. Becca was on a delivery run. I grabbed one side of the summer kindness stand. Shay grabbed the other. On 3. I whispered, 1, 2, 3. We shifted the heavy cardboard stand 2 inches to the left. It was imperceptible to the naked eye. The sun still smiled. The thermometer still showed our progress. But the angle was opened. The shadow that had protected Darlene was gone. Now, the camera above the register had a clear, direct line of sight into the mouth of the tip jar. I looked up at the black dome on the ceiling. Do not blink. I thought. The weekend arrived. Darlene breezed in, talking about a spiritual retreat she wanted to go to in the fall. She was wearing a new necklace. Gold, delicate, expensive. I worked the shift with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I did not watch her. I could not risk her seeing me watching. I let the camera be the eye. Sunday night. Becca left the office door unlocked when she went to deal with a vendor delivery at the back dock. It was my window. I slipped into the office. The monitor was on, showing the live feed of the empty cafe. I grabbed the mouse. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I minimized the live feed and opened the playback software. I knew the password because I had seen Becca type it in 100 times. Honey Harbor 1. I scrolled back to Saturday. I jumped to the peak rush. 1 in the afternoon. I watched the screen. There was Darlene. She was standing at the register. The summer kindness stand was shifted just enough. I could see the jar. I saw her look left. I saw her look right. Then, I saw it. She did not even look nervous. That was what made me sick. There was no shaking hand. No furtive glance. She reached into the jar with the casual ease of someone reaching for a grape in their own refrigerator. She grabbed a fistful of bills. She folded them in her palm. She dropped her hand to her side and slid the money into her apron pocket. She did it while smiling at a customer. She did it while chatting with Shay. I fast-forwarded. 2:15 in the afternoon. She did it again. This time, she took a 20 that was resting on top. 3:40 in the afternoon. She did it again. 3 times in one shift. I sat there, staring at the grainy footage, and I felt like I was going to vomit. It was not the anger I expected. It was a deep, hollow grief. This was my mother's sister. This was the woman who had held me when I was a baby. This was the woman who claimed to love me. And she was stealing from me with a smile on her face. She was looking me in the eye, asking about my day, and robbing me of my livelihood. It wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. She felt she deserved it. She felt she was smarter than us, that we were just sheep to be sheared. I pulled out my phone, I recorded the screen, I recorded all 3 clips. The quality was not perfect, but it was clear. You could see her face, you could see the money, you could see the theft. I heard the back door slam. Becca was coming back. I closed the software, maximized the live feed, and slipped out of the office just as Becca walked down the hall. "Hey," she said, looking at me suspiciously. "What were you doing?" "Just looking for a pen." I lied. I walked home that night with the evidence burning a hole in my pocket. I had the power now. I could go to the police. I could go to Miles. I could blow her world apart. But a part of me, the stupid, sentimental part that still remembered the aunt who used to braid my hair, wanted to give her one last chance. I wanted to believe that if I confronted her, if I showed her that I knew, she would break, she would apologize, she would stop. I found her in the kitchen, eating a yogurt she had not paid for. "Darlene," I said, "we need to talk." She looked up, spoon in her mouth. "You look serious." "Vi, what is it? Did you break a nail?" I sat down across from her. I placed my phone on the table, face down. "I know about the money." "Darlene," she did not flinch. "What money?" "The tips," I said. "I know you have been taking money from the jars. I know you have been putting it in your pocket. I know about the donation envelopes." She laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "Violet, you are being paranoid again. Is this about your medication? Have you been taking it?" "I do not take medication." "Darlene, and I'm not paranoid. I have proof." I flipped the phone over. I pressed play on the first video. We watched it in silence. The tiny Darlene on the screen reached into the jar. The tiny Darlene on the screen pocketed the cash. I watched her face as she watched herself. I expected shame. I expected fear. Instead, I saw rage. She slammed her hand down on the table, making the spoon rattle. "How dare you?" she hissed. I blinked. "How dare I?" "You are spying on me?" she shouted. "Standing up, after everything I have done for you? I came here to help you. I scrub your floors. I work at that damn cafe to support you. And you spy on me like I am a criminal? You are stealing." "Darlene!" I yelled back, standing up to meet her. "That is stealing. That is my rent money. That is Shay's grocery money. It is my money," she screamed. "I earned it. Do you think I get paid enough? Miles pays me peanuts. I bring in the customers. I bring in the charm. I deserve a share of that jar. You get a share," I said. "You get the runner's share." "It is not enough," she spat. "And you ungrateful little brat, you owe me. I took care of you when your mother was sick. I bought you clothes when you were a teenager. You owe me everything." She was rewriting history in real time. She had visited my mother once when she was sick. She had bought me a sweater from a discount bin in 1999. "Darlene," I said, my voice shaking, "I want you to pack your bags." She laughed again. "Oh, you are kicking me out? Good. I will go. I will leave you here to rot in your misery. You will see how hard it is without me. You will see." She stormed into the living room. She grabbed her suitcase. She started throwing clothes into it. I stood there, watching her. I felt a flicker of panic. If she left, she was gone. The money was gone. But then, she stopped. She sat down on the couch and started to cry. It was a performance. I knew it was a performance, but it was a good one. Great. Heaving sobs that shook her shoulders. "I have nowhere to go," she wailed. "How can you do this to family? I made a mistake, okay? I borrowed a little. I was going to pay it back. I just needed to get set up. Why are you so cruel?" She looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. "Violet, please, do not throw me out. I will pay it back. I promise. Just give me time. Do not ruin me." I looked at her. I saw the manipulation. She had threatened to leave to scare me. And when that didn't work, she pivoted to the victim. If I kicked her out now, she would spin the story to the whole town. Violet kicked her poor aunt out on the street. She would destroy me before I could even tell my side, and she knew it. She settled back into the cushions, her eyes watching me, calculating. She knew I was soft. She knew I valued peace over justice. "Fine," I said, my voice hollow. "You can stay, but you pay me back, every cent, and you stop stealing. I will." She sniffed. "I promise." She did not pay me back. 2 days later, I came home to find a letter under my door. It was from the landlord. "Dear Ms. Kelly, due to rising property taxes and market adjustments, your rent will increase by $150 per month effective upon lease renewal next month." I stared at the paper. $150. It might as well have been $1 million. I was already budgeting down to the penny. With the missing tips, I was negative every month. This increase was the breaking point. If I did not get that money back, the $5,600 she had stolen, I would lose the apartment. I looked at Darlene, who was painting her toenails on the couch. She looked comfortable. She looked safe. She believed she had won. She believed that because we were family, and because I was soft, I would swallow the loss. She thought she could cry her way out of a felony. I walked into my bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the bed and looked at the phone number for the local legal aid clinic. I called them the next morning on my break. I sat in my car. Windows rolled up. I spoke to a counselor named Sarah. I told her everything: the theft, the camera, the confrontation, the rent increase. She listened without interrupting. "Here is the reality." "Violet," Sarah said, her voice crisp and professional. "If you want to recover the money, you need a paper trail. The video is good, but you need to be careful. Massachusetts has strict wiretapping laws regarding audio recording. You cannot record a conversation secretly." "I know." I said, "I recorded the security monitor. There is no audio." "Good," she said, "that is admissible. But here's the other thing. If you expose her publicly, she could sue you for defamation if you get even one fact wrong. You need to be clinically precise. Truth is the absolute defense, but you have to be able to prove it is the truth." "What should I do?" I asked. "Stop treating this like a family dispute." Sarah said, "This is an employment matter and a criminal matter. If you want your money, and you want to protect your job, you need to stop negotiating with the thief. You need to present the evidence to your employer. And if they do not act, you need to be prepared to escalate." She paused. "And Violet? If you confront them, document that meeting, if it is in a public place, or if you inform them you are recording, you are protected. Do not let them bully you into silence." I hung up the phone. I looked at the cafe through the windshield. I saw Miles inside, laughing with a customer. I saw Darlene wiping down a table, pausing to touch the arm of a man who was leaving a tip. I saw the summer kindness sign in the window. I realized then that the kindness was the weapon they were using against me. They used my kindness to keep me quiet. They used the town's kindness to mask the theft. I was done being kind. I opened my notebook. I turned to a fresh page. Plan for termination. I wrote, I was not going to ask her to stop anymore. I was not going to ask for an apology. I was going to build a guillotine out of facts, and I was going to drop the blade in the middle of the morning shift. I wiped a tear from my cheek. It was the last tear I would shed for Aunt Darlene. From this moment on, she was not my aunt. She was the defendant. I put the car in gear and drove back to work. I had a firing to schedule. The back office of Harbor and Honey was not designed for tribunals. It was a closet with delusions of grandeur, smelling of stale toner and last week's mop water. I sat on a milk crate because there were only 2 chairs, and Becca and Miles occupied them. My laptop was open on the desk, the screen glowing with the spreadsheet that had cost me 3 nights of sleep. Next to it lay my spiral-bound notebook, the pages dog-eared and filled with my frantic handwriting, and in the center, like a smoking gun, was the flash drive containing the 3 video clips I had pulled from the security system. I had rehearsed this moment in the shower, in the car, in the dark of my bedroom while Darlene slept on my couch. I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, I felt like I was about to perform surgery on myself. I pointed to the screen. "Here's the data," I said. my voice steady but thin. Miles leaned forward, squinting. He was wearing his signature linen shirt. The sleeves rolled up to show off a tan that cost more than my car. He looked annoyed, not at the crime, but at the inconvenience of the meeting. "Walk me through this, Violet," he said, checking his watch. "We open in 30 minutes. I took a breath. The blue line represents the cafe's average tip percentage on weekdays over the last 3 months. It holds steady at 18%. The red line represents the weekends Aunt Darlene has worked. It drops to 12%. I clicked the next tab. These are the serial numbers of the bills I marked. I found 2 of them in the donation envelope for the summer kindness drive. The third one, a $10 bill, vanished entirely. I saw Becca flinch. She knew the implications of the donation envelope. That was not just theft. It was fraud. And finally, I said, plugging in the drive, the video. I played the clips. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen next door. We watched Darlene, pixels swimming on the screen, reach into the jar. We watched her smile. We watched her pocket the cash. 3 times. I stopped the video. Becca looked at her hands. She looked trapped. She was a good manager, but she was terrified of Miles. She knew that acknowledging this meant admitting she had let it happen under her watch. Miles sat back, steepling his fingers. He did not look shocked. He looked calculating. He looked like a man trying to figure out how much this was going to cost him, not in dollars, but in reputation. "Well," he said finally, "that is unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Miles, she stole $5,600. That is a conservative estimate. That is not unfortunate. That is a felony." Miles held up a hand. "Let us not use legal terms just yet. Violet, Darlene is family. She is complicated. I knew she had some financial trouble when I hired her. I thought we were helping her. You were not helping her." I said, "I was paying her. My coworkers were paying her." Miles sighed. He looked at Becca, then back at me. "Look, Violet, we are in the middle of the biggest charity drive this town has seen in 10 years. The Summer Kindness Drive is on every flyer from here to Boston. If we make a scene, if we drag the police into this, it is going to look messy. People will ask questions. They will ask why we did not catch it sooner. They will ask about the donation box security. It reflects badly on the brand." I felt a cold prickle of dread. I knew where this was going. "So what are you suggesting?" I asked. Miles leaned in, his voice dropping to a persuasive purr. "We handle this quietly. Off the books. I will talk to Darlene. We will work out a payment plan. She can pay back. Let us say, half? $2,500? She pays it back over 6 months. We let her go gently. We say it was a scheduling conflict. No police, no scandal. The donation drive stays pure." I stared at him. "You want me to take 50 cents on the dollar for money that was stolen from me?" I asked. "And you want to let her walk away without a record so you can keep your charity image?" "It is a compromise." "Violet," Miles said, his smile tight. "It gets you money now. If you go to the police, it will take years. And honestly, do you really want to be the niece who sent her aunt to jail? This town loves Darlene. She is on the library board now. She volunteers at the shelter. If you attack her, the blowback might not go the way you think." He was threatening me. It was subtle, wrapped in the guise of advice, but it was a threat. The town will take her side. He was telling me that my truth was worth less than her charm. I looked at Becca. "Say something." I willed her. Becca looked away. I stood up. I felt a clarity that was sharp and cold. "No," I said. Miles blinked. "Excuse me? No compromise." I said, "I want her fired. Today, and I want a police report filed. I want the full amount returned. $5,600. Miles's face hardened. The nice guy mask slipped, revealing the businessman who cut corners on payroll and bought cheap milk. "You are making a mistake, Violet," he said coldly. "You are creating a hostile environment." "I am not the one stealing," I said. I will not accept a settlement. I will not be quiet. If you do not handle this, I will. I grabbed my laptop. I grabbed my notebook. I walked out of the office before he could say another word. I went straight to the break room. My hands were shaking, but my mind was racing. Miles was not going to protect me. He was going to protect the business. If I wanted justice, I had to manufacture it myself. I needed insurance. I sat at the wobbly break table and opened my email. I drafted a statement. I wrote down everything: the dates, the amounts, the meeting with Miles, his offer of hush money. I attached the spreadsheet. I attached the video files. I sent it to myself. Then I sent it to my friend Sarah, the one who worked at the legal clinic. Subject: Statement of facts. Theft at Harbor and Honey. Body: If I am fired or silenced, this is the truth. I hit send. Then I found Shay. She was prepping lemons in the kitchen, slicing them with rhythmic precision. Shay, I said. She looked up, saw my face, and put the knife down. What happened? They are going to fire her. I said, but they want to bury it. I need you to do something for me. Anything. Shay said, there is going to be a meeting tomorrow morning. Before opening, Miles is going to bring Darlene in to let her go. He thinks he can bully me into signing an NDA or accepting a lowball offer. I need you to be there. Me? Shay squeaked. Violet, I am just a server. You are a witness. I said, you saw her take the money. I need a witness in the room so they cannot lie about what happens. You do not have to say anything. Just stand there. Please. Shay looked terrified. She looked at the door, then back at me. She took a deep breath. Okay, she whispered. I will be there. I went home that night, but I did not go inside. I sat in my car and watched the lights in my apartment. I could see Darlene's silhouette moving past the window. She was probably cooking. She was probably humming. I drove to a motel on the edge of town. I paid $60 for a room that smelled like pine cleaner and despair. I could not sleep under the same roof as her. Not tonight. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. I woke up before the alarm. The sky was the color of a bruise. I dressed in my uniform. Black pants, black shirt, the apron I had washed 1,000 times. It felt like armor. I drove to the cafe. The streets were empty. The fog was rolling off the harbor. Thick and gray. I parked around the back. I checked my phone. I had plenty of storage. I opened the camera app. I did not hide the phone. I did not want to be a spy anymore. I wanted to be a journalist of my own life. I hit record. I turned the camera on myself. My face looked pale in the dashboard light. My eyes dark circles. My name is Violet Kelly. I said to the lens, it is Wednesday, July 16th. It is 5:30 in the morning. I am about to enter a meeting with my employer, Miles Harrow, and my aunt, Darlene Morrow. Over the last 6 weeks, I have documented the theft of $5,600 from the tip pool at Harbor and Honey Cafe. I have video evidence. I have logs. Yesterday, management asked me to accept a partial repayment and keep this quiet to protect the business's reputation. I refused. I am recording this statement to document the termination meeting. As I fear retaliation or misrepresentation of the events, I stopped the recording. I saved it. I walked into the cafe. Miles was there. Becca was there. Shay was standing in the corner, looking like she wanted to merge with the wallpaper, and Darlene was there. She was sitting at table 4, the best table in the house, the one with the view of the harbor. She was drinking coffee. She looked relaxed. She clearly thought this was a performance review, or maybe a promotion. Violet, she called out when she saw me. Where were you last night? I made a roast. I did not answer. I walked over to the table. I placed my phone on the napkin holder, propped up so the camera faced the group. It was not hidden. It was right there. A black monolith. What is that? Miles asked sharply. It is for my records. I said, I am recording this meeting for my own protection. You cannot record us. Miles said. Standing up, it is a public space. Miles, I said, my voice calm. We are in the dining room, and I am a participant in this conversation. If you want me to turn it off, You can put your offer in writing and sign it right now. Otherwise, the phone stays on. Miles's jaw worked. He looked at Darlene, who was looking between us with growing confusion. Sit down. Violet, Miles spat. I sat. Darlene, Miles began, his voice taking on that oily managerial tone. We have some concerns. Concerns? Darlene asked, putting her cup down. About what? The new menu? I told you. People love the crab cakes. About the finances, Becca said, speaking for the first time. Darlene stiffened. Her eyes darted to me. There have been discrepancies, Miles said. Significant discrepancies in the tip pool and the donation drive. Darlene laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. Discrepancies? You mean math errors? You know I'm not a mathematician. Miles, if I miscounted a drawer, just take it out of my check. It is not a miscount. Darlene, I said. She turned to me. Her eyes were hard little stones. And what do you have to say about it, Violet? I pointed to the laptop I had set up on the table. I pressed the spacebar. The video played. Darlene watched herself steal. The room was silent. Even the espresso machine was quiet. When the clip ended, Darlene did not explode. She did not scream. She crumpled. Her face dissolved into a mask of absolute tragedy. Her shoulders shook. She brought her hands to her face. Oh God, she sobbed. Oh God, I was so desperate. She reached out across the table, trying to grab my hand. I pulled it back. Violet, please, she wept. You do not understand. The debt, the people I owe, they were going to hurt me. I didn't want to do it. I was borrowing it. I was going to put it back. I swear on your mother's grave. I was going to put it back. She looked at Miles. Miles, you know me. You know my heart. I am a good person. I am a community woman. I made a mistake. Please, do not do this. Miles looked uncomfortable. He hated women crying. It made him feel weak. Darlene, he said, his voice softening. We have to let you go. Let me go? She shrieked. You are firing me? Over a misunderstanding? It is against policy, Miles said, grasping for the handbook. The cash handling policy. It is zero tolerance. Policy? I cut in. My voice was loud. It rang off the tin ceiling. It is theft. Miles. Say the word. Darlene whipped her head toward me. The tears vanished instantly. The transition was so fast it was physical. 1 second she was a weeping willow. The next, she was a briar patch. You shut up, she hissed. I will not shut up. I said, $5,600. Darlene, that is what you took. That is what you owe us. I do not owe you anything, she screamed. She stood up, knocking her chair over. You owe me. She pointed a manicured finger at my face. You owe me. I got you this job. I used my name to get you in here. I stared at her. What are you talking about? I have worked here for 4 years. You just moved here 2 months ago. She sneered. It was an ugly, twisted expression. I vouched for you. I told everyone you were stable. I told them you were worth hiring despite your mess of a life. And this is how you repay me? By counting pennies? By filming me like a rat? The delusion was breathtaking. She genuinely believed it. In her mind, she was the matriarch, the provider, the power broker. The fact that I had housed her, fed her, and gotten her the job meant nothing. To a narcissist, reality is just a draft they can rewrite on the fly. You are fired. Darlene, Miles said, finding his spine at last. Get your things. Darlene looked at him. Then she looked at the camera. She smoothed her dress. She fixed her hair. Fine, she said, her voice icy. I do not want to work for people who do not understand loyalty anyway. She grabbed her purse. She walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the latch and turned back to me. You will regret this. Violet, she said quietly, you will regret humiliating me. She walked out. The bell chimed. The silence that followed was heavy. Miles let out a long breath. Okay, it is done. She is gone. He looked at me. Now delete the video. I looked at him. I picked up my phone. I stopped the recording. No. I said, What? Miles stood up. Violet, the agreement was… There was no agreement. Miles, you wanted to hide it. I wanted to handle it. Now it is handled. But I'm keeping this, because I do not trust you to pay me back the money she stole. I am not paying you for her crime, Miles shouted. Then you should have called the police, I said. I walked out. I grabbed Shay's arm on the way. Come on, I said. We are opening. The shift was a blur. I functioned on adrenaline and caffeine. Miles stayed in his office. Becca avoided eye contact. At 2 p.m, I clocked out. I went home. Darlene was gone. Her stuff was gone. The key was on the counter. But the apartment felt violated. It smelled like her perfume. I sat on my bed. I opened my laptop. I had the footage of the theft. I had the recording of the meeting. I opened a video editing program. I was not a professional, but I knew the basics. I blurred Miles's face. I blurred Becca's face. I blurred Shay's face. I kept Darlene's face clear. I did not include her address. I did not include her phone number. I did not include the name of the cafe, though locals would recognize the interior. I cut it together. The clip of the hand in the jar, the clip of the donation envelope, and then the clip of her in the meeting. I do not owe you anything. You owe me. I added a voiceover. My voice was calm. I did not sound angry. I sounded tired. This is my aunt, I said into the microphone. She lived on my couch for free. She worked with me, and over the course of 6 weeks, she stole $5,600 from me and my coworkers. When I caught her, she said I owed her. I exported the file. Title: The Cost of Family. I hovered over the upload button on TikTok. My finger hovered over the mouse. Sarah's voice was in my head. Truth is the absolute defense. Miles's voice was in my head. The town will take her side. Darlene's voice was in my head. You will regret humiliating me. If I posted this, there was no going back. I would be the girl who put her family on blast. I would be the drama. But if I didn't post it, she won. She would go to the next town, the next niece, the next job. She would tell her story about how I was crazy and ungrateful. She would win. I was done letting her win. I clicked post. I closed the laptop. I ordered a pizza. I took a shower. I tried to sleep. I woke up at 3 a.m. My phone was buzzing, not a text buzz, a continuous, angry vibration against the nightstand. I picked it up. Notifications were scrolling down the screen like a waterfall. Liked your video. Commented. OMG. Shared your video. Liked. I opened the app. The video had 40,000 views. I refreshed the page. 52,000. I refreshed again. 60,000. I clicked on the comments. The audacity. The way she flipped it on you. Girl, sue her. I know this woman. She owes my mom money too. But then, the others. Why would you post this? Keep family business private. You ruined her life over money? Trashy. She looks desperate. You are cruel. Maybe she really did help you and you are just ungrateful. I sat in the dark. The blue light of the screen illuminating my face, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and terror. I had wanted the truth to scream louder than her lies. Well, the truth was screaming now, and the whole world was listening. I watched the number tick up to 100,000. I put the phone down. I stared at the ceiling. I had started a fire. I just hoped I wouldn't be the one to burn. The internet does not care about the truth. It cares about the plot. I learned this less than 24 hours after hitting post on the video that exposed my Aunt Darlene. I had gone to sleep a victim of theft, and I woke up as a main character in a global soap opera. My phone had become a radioactive brick on my nightstand, buzzing with a manic, relentless energy that made the wood vibrate against the wall. I picked it up with a sense of dread that sat heavy in my gut. The view count was no longer a number I could comprehend. It was in the millions. My notifications were a blur of names I did not know, in languages I did not speak. But it was the nature of the engagement that terrified me. The video had been ripped from its context and dissected by the content industrial complex. There were reaction videos where strangers screamed at their screens in exaggerated shock. There were body language experts analyzing the way Darlene touched her hair, claiming it was a definitive sign of sociopathy. There were skits where teenagers in wigs reenacted the confrontation, turning the worst moment of my life into a punchline. I scrolled. Numb. She is so calm. One comment read with 30,000 likes. That is the voice of a woman who is done. I do not know. Read the reply. Why was she filming? Seems staged. Who films a meeting like that unless they want clout? Team Violet. Sue her into the ground. Family is family. You do not air dirty laundry like this. This generation has no loyalty. I felt exposed. I had stripped the walls off my life to show the world the rot inside. And now thousands of people were walking through the ruins, critiquing the wallpaper. I was not Violet Kelly, the server who wanted her rent money back. I was the niece. I was a symbol of generational trauma, or workplace surveillance, or ungrateful youth, depending on which algorithm served you the clip. I put the phone down and went to the kitchen to make coffee. My hands were shaking. The apartment was quiet, blissfully, painfully quiet without Darlene's constant humming, but the silence felt charged, as if the noise from the internet was bleeding into the room. Then, the second shoe dropped. My friend Sarah sent me a link. Do not watch this if you are not ready, the text said, but you need to know. I clicked the link. It was a video posted by Darlene. She was sitting in a car. Not her car, I noted, but a rental, probably paid for with my money. The lighting was soft, flattering. She was wearing a cardigan I had seen her pull from a donation bin weeks ago. Looking small and fragile, her eyes were red. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice trembling. "My name is Darlene, and I just need to speak my truth." She wiped a tear, a perfect, single tear. "I am being targeted," she whispered. "My niece. I love her. I have always loved her. But she has been struggling for a long time. Mental health is a serious thing, and I do not want to shame her. But the video she posted is edited. It is manipulated." I stared at the screen, my mouth open. I was not stealing. Darlene continued, looking directly into the camera with wide, pleading eyes. "I was managing the cash flow for the donation drive. Violet knows this, but she got confused. Or maybe she is angry because I told her she needed to get help for her spending addiction. I do not know. All I know is that I am a 52-year-old woman with nothing, and she has turned the world against me for clicks. Please, I just want peace." The video ended. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. It was masterful. It was evil. She had taken the very accusations I leveled against her, theft, manipulation, and mirrored them back at me. She weaponized her age. She weaponized the vague stigma of mental health. She planted the seed that I was the unreliable narrator. I checked the comments on her video. Oh my God, I knew it. The niece seemed too cold. This poor woman. The internet is a witch hunt. Justice for Darlene. The tide was turning, not completely, but enough to create a riptide that threatened to pull me under. I wasn't just fighting a thief anymore. I was fighting a narrative. Going into Harbor and Honey that morning felt like walking onto a battlefield where the soldiers were armed with lattes and judgment. The bell chimed as I walked in, and the conversation in the dining room died instantly. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. I saw Mrs. Gable in her usual booth. She looked at me, then pointedly picked up a menu to block her face. Miles was at the counter, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He glared at me. "You are late," he snapped. "I am 3 minutes early." "Miles," I said, checking the clock. "Just get an apron," he muttered, "and stay off your phone. If I see you recording anything, you are done. Violation of privacy policy." I walked to the back. Shay was there, looking pale. "Did you see it?" she whispered. "Darlene's video?" "I saw it," I said, tying my apron strings so tight they dug into my waist. "People are talking. Vi, Shay said, her voice low. A lot of the locals. They believe her. They remember her from the drive. She was so charming. They think you framed her. Let them think it, I said, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I have the proof. The shift was a nightmare of passive aggression. A group of teenagers came in, giggling and pointing their phones at me. Do the voice, one of them shouted. Say the line about the $5,000. I ignored them. Then came the Darlene defenders. An older man, a regular named Mr. Henderson, who used to flirt with Darlene, left a single dollar on a $50 check. On the receipt, he wrote in shaky block letters, "Respect your elders." But there were others. A woman in a business suit watched me all through lunch. When she paid, she handed me the bill with a heavy, deliberate gaze. "Do not let them bully you," she said quietly. I looked at the check later. She had left a $100 tip for the lawyer. She had scrawled on the napkin. I went to the bathroom and cried for exactly 3 minutes. Then I washed my face, reapplied my mascara, and went back out. I could not crack. If I cracked, Darlene was right. If I showed emotion, I was unstable. I had to be made of steel. That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail, assuming it was another troll. But something made me answer. "Violet Kelly?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, my name is Elena Russo. I am a reporter with the Coastal Gazette. I have been following the story about Harbor and Honey." I stiffened. "I am not doing interviews." I said, "My aunt has already turned this into a circus. I am not adding another ring. I am not interested in the circus." Elena said. Her voice was calm, professional. "I am interested in the labor dispute. I saw your video. You mentioned wage theft. You mentioned that management tried to suppress the report. That is the story I want to tell. Not the family drama, the workplace accountability." I hesitated. A real journalist, not a TikTok commentator. "If I talk to you," I said slowly, "we do not talk about my aunt's mental state. We do not talk about my divorce. We talk about the numbers. We talk about the blind spots in the security. We talk about the management's response." "Agreed," Elena said. "We met at a park bench 3 towns over, away from the prying eyes of Briar Glen." Elena was sharp. She asked for the spreadsheets. She asked for the timestamps. She looked at the blurred video I had posted. But she also asked to see the unblurred raw files to verify identity. "This is systematic," she murmured, looking at the tip drop data. This wasn't just an opportunistic grab. She was hunting. The article came out 2 days later. It was buried in the Metro section, but it was online. And it was solid. The headline read, "Viral video exposes vulnerabilities in tipped wage security at local cafe." It was dry. It was factual. It quoted a labor attorney about the responsibilities of employers to secure tip pools. It laid out the timeline of my reports to Miles and his refusal to act. It painted me not as a vengeful niece, but as a whistleblower. It calmed the internet storm slightly. The comments shifted from, "She is crazy," to "Wait, the boss knew and did nothing?" But the article also triggered something else. It made me look closer. Elena had asked a question during the interview that stuck in my brain like a splinter. "You mentioned the summer kindness drive." She had said, "Did you ever see the breakdown of how the funds were allocated? Was there a written agreement about the tip sharing?" I went back to the cafe's Instagram page. I scrolled back 3 months to the initial announcement of the drive. There was a graphic, a bright yellow sun with the words, "Summer Kindness Drive," in bold font. Underneath, in smaller text, it read, "Donate directly or leave a tip. A portion of all gratuities this summer will go to support the Briar Glen Youth Shelter." A portion. It was so vague. It was legally meaningless. What was a portion? 1%? 50%? Darlene had used that ambiguity. When I caught her with the cash in the donation envelope, she could have claimed she was just allocating the portion. She had found the gray area in the policy and set up camp there. But who wrote the policy? Miles. I was cleaning the espresso machine on a slow Tuesday when Shay sidled up to me. She looked nervous. checking over her shoulder to make sure Becca was in the back. "Violet," she whispered, "I read the article. And? And there is something I remembered. Something from last year." My stomach tightened. "What is it? Shay?" "It was around Christmas," she said, scrubbing a spot on the counter that was already clean. "We were slow. Vendor bills were piling up. I heard Becca and Miles arguing in the office. The door was cracked." "Go on." Becca was saying they couldn't pay the coffee roaster. And Miles said, "Just smooth it over with the cash drop. We will pay it back when the holiday rush hits." I froze. "Smooth it over?" That is what he called it. Shay said, "cash smoothing." Taking money from the cash sales, and sometimes the tip jar if the drawer was light, to cover immediate bills. He treated it like a loan. "Did he pay it back?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. "I do not know," Shay admitted. But if he was doing it, and Darlene saw him doing it, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Darlene was a thief, yes, but she was also a mimic. She hadn't just invented the idea of skimming. She had entered a culture of skimming. She had watched the owner treat the cash flow like a personal piggy bank, and she had decided to cut herself a slice. Miles wasn't just protecting the family vibe when he tried to hush me up. He wasn't just worried about the scandal of a stealing employee. He was worried that if I started looking too closely at the tip jars, I would find his fingerprints alongside hers. He was terrified of an audit. I felt a sudden, cold clarity. Darlene was the scapegoat. She was the greedy, sloppy thief who got caught. But Miles? Miles was the architect. I needed to know for sure. I waited until Miles was in the office. I knocked on the door. "Come in," he barked. I walked in. He was staring at his computer screen, looking more haggard than usual. The viral fame of his cafe had brought business. Yes, but it was the wrong kind of business. It was people coming to gawk, not to spend. "Miles," I said, "I need to request a copy of my payroll records for the last year, and a copy of the written policy regarding the summer kindness tip allocation." He spun his chair around. His eyes were cold. "Why?" he asked. "Because I am auditing my income," I said, "and because the article raised some questions about how the tips were distributed during the drive." He stood up. He was not a tall man, but he knew how to use space to intimidate. "You are pushing it." "Violet," he said softly, "I am asking for my records." "Miles, by law, you have to provide them." "You are creating a hostile work environment," he said, repeating the phrase like a talisman. "You are disrupting the team. You are harassing management. If you continue this witch hunt, I will have no choice but to terminate your employment for cause." "For cause?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my knees. "Asking for payroll records is not cause, Miles. It is a right. It is insubordination." He countered, "You are trying to undermine me. You are trying to destroy this business because you are bitter about your aunt." He leaned over the desk. "Let it go. Violet, you exposed her. She is gone. You won. Take the win and get back to work. Or get out." I looked at him. I saw the fear behind the aggression. He was terrified. "I will expect those records within 3 business days." I said. I turned and walked out. I sat in my car after the shift and called the number on the business card the labor attorney had given me. Not the clinic counselor, but a specialist named Robert Vance who had reached out after the article. He listened to my account of the meeting. "That is retaliation," Robert said. His voice was deep, reassuring. "Threatening termination for requesting payroll records is a violation of Massachusetts wage laws. And the hostile work environment claim is a classic defense tactic. They try to frame your protected activity as harassment." "What do I do?" I asked. "Write it down," Robert said. "Send him an email summarizing the conversation. Dear Miles, to confirm our conversation today, I requested X and Y, and you informed me that pursuing this would lead to termination. Create the paper trail. If he fires you now, we have him on retaliation." "And the cash smoothing?" I asked. Robert hummed. "That is harder to prove without the books. But if we file a lawsuit for the unpaid tips from your aunt, we can request discovery. We can subpoena the financial records. If he is mixing funds, a forensic accountant will find it. It sounded expensive. It sounded exhausting. It also sounded like the only way out. I drove home. The apartment was still a mess of Darlene's things. I had packed most of her clothes into trash bags, but I hadn't had the energy to haul them to the dumpster. I decided to purge. I needed the space. I needed her ghost out of my house. I grabbed a black garbage bag that was sitting in the corner. It was filled with the junk she had cleared out of her purse before she left. Old receipts, gum wrappers, crumpled tissues. I went to tie it up, but the bag ripped. Trash spilled onto my living room floor. I groaned. I knelt down to scoop it up. My hand brushed against a piece of paper. It was stiffer than a receipt. I picked it up. It was a carbon copy of a money order. I smoothed it out. It was dated 3 weeks ago. Paid to the order of Apex Recovery Services. Amount, $2,000. Apex Recovery Services. It wasn't a landlord. It wasn't a utility company. It sounded generic. Corporate. I grabbed my laptop and typed the name into the search bar. Nothing came up for a company with that exact name in a consumer context. No website. No Yelp reviews. I dug deeper. I checked the state business registry. Apex Recovery Services, LLC. Registered agent, Carl V. Gambino. Address, AP O Box, in Revere, Massachusetts. I searched the address. It was a strip mall. I searched Apex Recovery Services scam. A forum post popped up from 2 years ago. Has anyone dealt with Apex? They bought my debt from a payday lender. These guys are aggressive. They called my work. I sat back on my heels. Debt. Darlene hadn't been sending money to a landlord in Florida. She hadn't been saving for an apartment. She had been paying off a debt collector, a shark. The people I owe. They were going to hurt me. She had screamed in the meeting. I had thought she was being dramatic. I thought she meant she owed a friend or a landlord, but she meant she owed sharks. $2,000. That was a huge chunk of what she had stolen. She wasn't stealing to get rich. She was stealing to stay afloat. She was drowning in a different kind of debt than I was. A darker, more dangerous kind. It didn't excuse what she did. She still stole from me. She still gaslit me. But it made the picture complete. She was a desperate woman who had found a soft target, me, and bled me dry to keep the wolves at bay. I looked at the money order stub again. If she was paying $2,000 at a time, how deep was the hole? And then I thought about the cash smoothing. Darlene was desperate. Miles was desperate. Harbor and Honey looked successful from the outside. The lines, the tourists, the summer kindness. But inside, it was a house of cards built on debt and theft. Everyone was stealing from everyone to pay someone else. My phone buzzed. I jumped. It was late. Who was texting me at 11 at night? It was a text from a blocked number. You think it was just your aunt? My heart stopped. A second text came through. An image. I clicked on it. It took a moment to load on my spotty Wi-Fi. It was a photo, grainy, low light. It looked like it had been taken from a weird angle, maybe from a phone propped up on a shelf or hidden in a pocket. It showed the back office of Harbor and Honey. I recognized the calendar on the wall. It was from last month. Miles was standing by the open safe. He was holding a stack of cash, the thick banded bricks of bills that we prepared for the bank deposit, but he wasn't putting them in a deposit bag. He was shoving them into the inside pocket of his blazer. He was looking at the door, his face tight with the same furtive, panicked expression I had seen on Darlene when she dipped her hand into the jar. I stared at the photo. Look at Miles. The text said, I didn't know who sent it. Maybe Shay. Maybe a disgruntled ex-employee. Maybe even Darlene. Trying to burn the house down on her way out. But the message was clear. Darlene was just the leak in the roof. Miles was the rot in the foundation, and I was standing inside the house, holding a match. I looked at the photo. I looked at the money order stub. I looked at the spreadsheet on my laptop. I had wanted my $5,600 back, but now I realized the price of admission was going to be much higher. I wasn't just fighting for my tips anymore. I was about to take down the whole damn cafe. The photo on my phone screen was grainy, a low-resolution capture of a crime in progress. But the details were sharp enough to cut me. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop screen casting a blue pallor over my hands, and I dissected the image like a surgeon. I needed to be sure. In the world of viral accusations, a blurry photo was not proof. It was slander. I zoomed in on the calendar hanging on the wall behind Miles. The date was visible. The 12th. That was a Tuesday. I opened my spreadsheet. On Tuesday the 12th, the cash drawer had been short by $300. At the time, Becca had blamed a change error and written it off. I looked at the angle of the photo. It was taken from high up, looking down at the safe. It wasn't a handheld shot. It was a surveillance angle. I closed my eyes and visualized the back hallway of Harbor and Honey. There was a camera there. An old, bulky model pointed at the delivery door. We all assumed it was broken because the little red light never blinked, but if it was wide angle, it would catch the edge of the office, specifically the safe when the door was open. The anonymous texter hadn't snuck in. They had access to the legacy security system, the one that didn't overwrite every 48 hours because it recorded to a hard drive in the basement that no one touched. It was real. Miles Harrow, the man who drove a luxury sedan and preached about community values, was skimming cash from his own business and blaming his staff for the losses. I went to work the next day with a stomach full of lead. The cafe was tense. The article in the Coastal Gazette had brought in a new kind of customer, people who watched us work with suspicion, counting the change we gave them, whispering when we tipped the jars. I found Becca in the dry storage room. She was counting bags of coffee beans, her hands shaking slightly. She looked 10 years older than she had a month ago. "Becca," I said, closing the door and leaning against it. She jumped, dropping a bag of dark roast. "Violet, Jesus, you scared me. We need to talk about the cash smoothing," I said. The color drained from her face. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. "I do not know what you are talking about," she stammered, bending down to pick up the beans. "Stop it, Becca," I said, my voice low and hard. "I saw the photo. I know Miles takes cash from the safe and the jars to pay vendors. I know he has been doing it for months. I know the cafe is broke." Becca slumped. She sat down on a stack of flour sacks and put her head in her hands. It was supposed to be temporary. She whispered. Her voice was muffled, thick with tears. The rent on the building went up. The coffee prices tripled. Miles. He didn't want to panic the staff. He said he would pay it back. He said he was just moving liquidity. "Liquidity?" I asked, incredulous. "He is stealing from the tip pool." "Becca, that is not liquidity. That is our rent money. That is Shay's grocery money. He promised he would put it back," Becca cried, looking up at me. Her eyes were desperate, and sometimes he does. But then a cooler breaks, or the tax bill comes, and he takes it again. I tried to stop him. "Violet, I swear, but he is the owner. What could I do?" "You could have told us," I said. "Instead of letting us think we were crazy, instead of letting Darlene take the fall for everything." "Darlene was stealing," Becca argued. "She was taking advantage of the chaos." "Yes," I said. "She was a rat in a sinking ship, but Miles is the one who drilled the holes in the hull." I walked out of the storage room, leaving Becca crying among the flour sacks. I felt sick. The moral clarity I had felt when I exposed Darlene was gone, replaced by a murky, suffocating dread. If I exposed Miles, the cafe would close, the IRS would come, the Department of Labor would come, the doors would be padlocked. Shay would lose her job. The cook, a quiet man named Marco who sent money home to his family, would lose his job. I would lose my job. We would all go down. But if I stayed quiet, if I let it slide because jobs are at stake, then I was complicit. I was accepting a system where the workers were the bank, where our wages were an interest-free loan to a man who couldn't manage his business. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that person anymore. I went home and drafted a document. It wasn't a press release. It was a proposal to Miles Harrow regarding Irregularities in tip distribution and cash handling. Proposal for resolution. 1. Immediate repayment of all misappropriated tip funds to staff, calculated from the last fiscal year. 2. Implementation of a transparent, third-party tip accounting system. 3. A written admission of past accounting errors to the staff. If these terms are met within 48 hours, I will consider the matter closed internally. I printed it. I put it in an envelope. I walked into Miles's office at the end of the shift. He was staring at his phone, reading comments on the cafe's Facebook page. He looked angry. I put the envelope on his desk. "What is this?" he asked, eyeing it like it was a bomb. "A way out," I said. He opened it. He read it. His face turned a deep, mottled red. He laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. "You want me to admit to accounting errors? In writing? To the staff? It is better than the alternative," I said. "And what is the alternative? Violet? You post another video? You think people care? You are yesterday's news. The internet moves on. I have a photo." "Miles," I said, "a photo of you at the safe on the 12th. The laughter stopped. The silence that filled the room was heavy and dangerous. "Who sent you that?" he whispered. "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is that I have it, and I have Becca's confession. She told me everything about the cash smoothing." Miles sat back. He looked at me for a long time. Then, he opened his desk drawer. He pulled out a checkbook. He wrote a check. He tore it out and slid it across the desk. I looked at it. $10,000. Take a sabbatical." "Violet," he said, his voice smooth again. The salesman returning. "You are stressed. You have been through a lot with your aunt. Take this. Go somewhere nice. Sign a little document saying you deleted all your files. And we part ways friends. I will give you a reference that will get you hired at the Ritz." I stared at the check. $10,000. It would pay off my credit cards. It would secure my apartment for 6 months. It was freedom. All I had to do was sell my soul. I looked at Miles. I saw the arrogance in his eyes. He thought everyone had a price because he had a price. He thought money was the only language that mattered. I picked up the check. Miles smiled. "Smart girl." I ripped the check in half. Then I ripped it again. I let the pieces flutter onto his desk. "I do not want your hush money." "Miles," I said, "I want my tips. I want the truth. Get out," he hissed. "I will see you at the community meeting on Friday," I said. "I am canceling the meeting," he snapped. "If you cancel it, I post the photo," I said. I walked out. My legs were shaking, but my head was high. I got home to find my apartment door unlocked. Panic spiked in my chest. I pushed the door open, my hand gripping my keys as a weapon. Darlene was standing in the middle of my living room. She looked like a ghost of the woman who had arrived 2 months ago. Her hair was unwashed, her roots showing gray. Her clothes were wrinkled. She looked frantic. "How did you get in?" I asked, staying by the door. I still had a copy of the key. She said. Her voice was jagged. "I made one at the hardware store, just in case." "Give it to me," I said, holding out my hand. She ignored me. She paced the small room, wringing her hands. "You have to fix this." "Violet," she said, "you have to take the video down. You have to post a retraction. Say you were wrong. Say you were off your meds. I do not care what you say. Just fix it." "I am not lying for you. Darlene," I said, "you stole from me." "It wasn't for me," she screamed. She spun around, her eyes wild. "It wasn't for clothes or jewelry. It was for them." "Who?" I asked. "Apex Recovery?" She froze. "How do you know that name?" "I found the money order," I said. "Who are they?" "Darlene? They are not a bank." She whispered. "They are bad people. I borrowed money from a guy in Florida to start a business. It failed. They sold the debt to these guys in Revere. They call me at night. They know where I am. They said if I do not pay, they will come for me. That is why I took the tips. I was trying to save my life." I looked at her. I saw the terror. It was real. She wasn't stealing out of greed. She was stealing out of survival. But then I remembered the gaslighting. I remembered her telling Mrs. Gable I was unstable. I remembered her telling me I was unlovable. "You should have told me," I said quietly. "If you had told me, we could have gone to the police. We could have figured it out. Instead, you robbed me. You lied to me. You tried to destroy my reputation to save your own skin. I couldn't tell you," she spat. "You are so righteous. You with your little notebooks and your budgets. You would have judged me. I am judging you now." I said, "Please, Violet," she begged, dropping to her knees. "This is family. If you do not help me, I am dead. Just delete the video. Let me get a job. No one will hire me with that video up. I cannot delete the truth. Darlene." She stared at me. The desperation in her eyes hardened into something ugly, something ancient. "You know why I picked you?" she said softly. She stood up, dusting off her knees. "I waited, because you are soft," she said. Her voice was full of venom. "You have always been soft, even as a kid. You apologize when people bump into you. You let your husband walk all over you for years. I thought, Violet won't fight back. Violet will just cry and take it." I felt the words hit me like physical blows. They targeted the deepest insecurity I had, the fear that my kindness was actually cowardice. "I thought you were a safe mark," she sneered, "because you are weak." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had tried to help, the woman I had defended, the woman I had loved, and I felt something snap. Not a break, but a setting, like a broken bone finally clicking back into alignment. "I am not soft." "Darlene," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of the woman who had survived a divorce, the voice of the woman who had worked double shifts for years, the voice of the woman who had just stared down a corrupt business owner. "I am not soft. I am just finished." I walked to the door and opened it. "Get out, and leave the key." She looked at me, searching for a crack. She found none. She threw the key on the floor and walked out. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I put the chain across. I was alone. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel lonely. I felt ready. Friday morning arrived with a sky the color of slate. The Restore Trust meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock. Miles had tried to frame it as a town hall, inviting select regulars and community leaders to discuss the future of Harbor and Honey. It was a trap. He wanted to control the narrative. He wanted to paint the recent events as the actions of a rogue employee, Darlene, and reassure the town that the family was strong. I walked in at 9:55. I was wearing my best blazer. A thrift store, find I had tailored myself. I had my laptop in my bag. I had a folder of documents under my arm. Shay was waiting for me by the door. She looked terrified, but she was there. "You ready?" she whispered. "No," I said. "Let us do it anyway." The cafe was rearranged. The tables were pushed together. About 30 people were there. Miles, Becca, the kitchen staff, Mrs. Gable, a few members of the charity board, and Elena, the reporter. Miles stood at the front, looking charismatic and sorrowful. "Thank you all for coming," he began. His voice was warm, practiced. "We have had a difficult few weeks. We were betrayed by someone we trusted, but I want you to know that Harbor and Honey is committed to integrity. We are victims here, too." He paused for effect. "We have audited the books, we have tightened security, and we are moving forward." He looked at me. His eyes were a warning. "Does anyone have any questions?" I stood up. "I do." I said. The room turned. "Violet," Miles said, his smile tightening. "This is a time for healing. Healing requires truth." "Miles," I said, "and you are not telling it." I walked to the front. I placed my laptop on a table. I didn't ask for permission. I plugged it into the large monitor Miles had set up for his own presentation. "What are you doing?" Becca hissed, stepping forward, showing the audit. I said, "The real one." I hit play. The video started. It wasn't the edited TikTok version. It was a new compilation. First, Darlene's hand in the jar. The crowd murmured. They had seen this. Then, the photo of Miles, the timestamp, the cash in his hand, the safe door open. The room went silent. Then, an audio recording. It was from my phone, recorded during my confrontation with Becca. I had not told her I was recording. Massachusetts was a two-party consent state for secret audio. But I had consulted Robert, the attorney. If you record in a public area where there is no expectation of privacy, like a kitchen with open doors, it is a gray area. But for a public meeting? Play it. Becca's voice rang out, tinny but clear. He promised he would put it back. But then a cooler breaks, and he takes it again. I stopped the recording. I turned to the room. Darlene Morrow stole $5,600, I said, but she was just following the leader. Miles Harrow has been using the tip pool as a personal line of credit for 2 years. He calls it cash smoothing. I call it wage theft. Miles lunged. He didn't think. He just moved. He rushed toward the table, his face twisted in a snarl of pure rage. "Give me that!" he shouted, reaching for my phone, which was resting next to the laptop. I stepped back. I didn't flinch. Shay stepped forward, blocking him. Then Marco, the cook, stepped out of the kitchen. Crossing his arms, Miles stopped. He looked around the room. He saw the faces of the community leaders. He saw Elena, the reporter, typing furiously on her phone. He saw Mrs. Gable, looking at him with horror. He realized, too late, that he had lost. I looked him in the eye. This is why people do not report theft. "Miles," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room, because the powerful call it drama when it is their money, but when it is our money, when it is the money we stand on our feet for 10 hours a day to earn, then it is just business. I unplugged my laptop. "I am done," I said. I walked out of Harbor and Honey for the last time. The aftermath was not a movie ending. There was no parade. There was no sudden windfall of cash. The cafe closed 3 days later. The Department of Labor launched an investigation. Miles declared bankruptcy and moved to Connecticut before the lawsuits could hit him. We didn't get our money back. The sharks that Darlene owed? I don't know if they ever found her. She disappeared the night I kicked her out. I blocked her number. I blocked her email. I mourn her sometimes, or at least the idea of her. But I do not look for her. Shay got a job at a bakery across town. Becca left the industry entirely. As for me, I am still in Briar Glen. I am still paying off my debt. Dollar by slow dollar. I work at a bookstore now. It pays less, but nobody touches the register but me. The viral video is still up. It has 4 million views now. Sometimes, late at night, I read the comments. They are still arguing about whether I was right or wrong, whether I was a hero or a villain. They want a neat ending. They want to know that good triumphed and evil was punished. But revenge isn't about justice. It's about clarity. It's about burning down the forest so you can finally see the sky. I lost my job. I lost my aunt. I lost my sense of safety. But I found my spine. And that, I think, is worth $5,600. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a long road from that first missing $20 bill to the final showdown, and I'm grateful you stuck with me through every twist and turn. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below with your country or city. It's wild to think my story is reaching people all over the world. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of betrayal, justice, and the messy truth of real life, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Was I too harsh on Darlene? Should I have taken the settlement from Miles? Let me know in the comments. Stay safe, trust your gut, and always count your change.